have a leak, a good bit that has to be replaced.
Is that what you have on yours now?
It's not on the whole house, it's just on that back
I'd
addition.
just probably go with hardy plank.
See, that's what we have, ours, we need to replace some of them. But when they did the lawsuit, we sent in a sample of it and we didn't have the right kind.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we didn't get a chance to do it.
That was a class action
But,
suit.
but
It
now
had,
we have to have like the first 4 or 5, almost all the way around the house
ah,
taken up. But the hardy board that they have it, we can do that, but
they got one that mimics it a lot, that's
Yeah.
kinda close to it. A hardy plank.
Do they?
That's,
I just want it to be seamless, I want it to look like,
you may wanna go with hardy plank.
because it butts up on a flat surface.
The one mine is this wide.
Yeah.
Mine's back from the thirties and forties
Mm,
and probably late 1800s when they,
Yeah.
it's the original Dutch lap, wood stuff. It's only this wide. Is yours
Yeah, ours is,
a little bit wider than that,
it's
right?
about that,
Yeah,
that
7
wide.
inch. You could probably go with that hardy.
And but it's tapered, so it's smaller at the top.
Send me a picture of it,
I will.
cause you might
Of
just do hardy
measurements.
plank.
Okay,
It'd be a whole lot better. It'd match closer to what you got.
okay.
Kirsten, are we, okay. Good evening. It is 6 o'clock, top of the hour, and the City of Billerica Historical Preservation Commission is now in session on June 16th, 2020. Please stand for the pledge.
Directly behind you.
There we are.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You all have had a chance to see the agenda. Do we have an adoption, motion to accept the agenda?
Motion to accept?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept. All in favor, raise your hand. Motion carried, unanimous. Approval of the minutes. Corrections, additions, do we remember?
I don't remember how to do
That's
this.
the,
Yeah. Have you had a chance to read them?
I'm reading right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been very busy
Okay.
this past few days.
I read the email, so.
Motion to approve.
second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Okay. We have no public comment. Okay. Report of officers and standing committees. Anybody have anything to say? I know that we have not met for a long, long time. And I've missed all you guys. I've kind of tried to send you messages to see how you're doing, and I see Renee sometimes in the stores, and I see Alan putting in rose bushes at his house, and I see, Sarah and her husband putting up a car place. Kim, I haven't
Hadn't seen me.
but there,
Yeah, AWOL,
anyway,
yeah. You go anywhere if you're doing.
a lot has changed since our last minutes, obviously, and I think that what I would really like to do is to have everybody just take a moment of silence to honor those who have died, perhaps unjustly, not perhaps, but unjustly, so that we think about where we're going. So, a moment of silence if you wish. Amen. Thank you. One of the things that we were doing was with Ron putting in all this effort and awesome time, I know, in and out with them redoing the city hall. He had asked for us to give me some input. And so I think we sent a message to people to see if you had any ideas. In my interviews with people, I had some names, and so I had asked Alan if he wanted to check with Teddy Williams, and you want to report on that. I asked Kim and Sarah if they had anything. So if you all would kind of tell us maybe what you were able to find, if anything.
Nancy, can you pull your microphone down a little bit? I can barely hear you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, Sarah, I know that you gave a lot of things to Ron. Do you have anything else to add?
No. What do I need to add?
I mean,
Oh, well, I'm gonna talk to Amy about Marchman, see what buildings he built. And then, that's all I got. I done gave him everything. We talked, I showed up with the binder, I gave him stories.
Great. Kim?
Nothing vital to report. I did want to ask, somebody was supposed to be getting in touch with Teddy Williamson. Did that occur?
I called him twice, left a message
Yeah.
at his thing, and got the 2 referrals that Nancy left me on the email.
Okay.
Never heard back.
Okay.
But barring knocking on the door, I guess that's the next step.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's not willing or didn't get the message, or
Everybody on that street's been locking their doors to the public.
I kind of
For
assumed so with
months.
what's going on. But
Yeah.
I saw, we went by
Who
there
is
and I
it?
saw it had an open sign on and there was somebody in there.
Who's
so.
that? Oh.
But
If there's specific information, I can try to weasel it out of him. I know him.
do you know him personally?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, you may be a better option than me then.
Yeah, okay. You know, go ahead.
Who is he? What are we doing?
Was there anything specific that we
Williamson?
were looking for?
Photos?
He has like photos
Any photo,
of
because Janice Fisher,
the
my neighbor,
explosion and
was friends of
Oh,
of
okay.
those. And she said he has a whole notebook of pictures.
And I
and that
used that name and it didn't.
We would be able to maybe get, you
I
know.
left 2 messages with him.
Okay.
He may be busy, I don't know. I didn't wanna go barging in going, hey, give me your photos, kind of thing, so.
No, he won't let you take his photos. He
No.
will make copies for
Right,
you.
and
Yeah.
I assumed so, but I didn't wanna just, you know,
Yeah, that's how I got a picture of mine.
really?
Okay.
And when
Well-
you say on that street that they're locking the doors, what street are you talking about?
Tavern Street, that where?
Oh.
Amy
okay.
Brown Insurance,
I
Teddy
was
Williams
Very
Insurance.
confused as to what you
and-
meant by that
Yeah,
for a
'cause
moment.
I do business with Amy, and I went to
He's right next door.
do insurance
Oh,
with
that
her.
guy.
Okay,
Yeah, I
gotcha.
met him.
And the doors were locked. She wouldn't let anybody, and I had to sit out on the bench outside and do my business.
Oh,
Well, one
Okay.
of the things that I mentioned when some of you weren't here yet is that one of the ladies that I've interviewed, Mrs. Bentley, she sold the tickets to the theater. And she did verify the fact that her brother ran the projectionist, and it wasn't a balcony, but all of the African-American people had to enter on the Wilson Street side. And there was at least 20 stairs going up, and they sat in there. And she said exactly what Shirley Marchman told me, is that they had the best seats because they were up so high. But then they had to go back down, and she said the booth that she was in to sell tickets that jutted out onto Wilson Street, that's where the refreshments were. And so they would come down the stairs and get the refreshments and go up. She said that it closed in 1967 because there was no business. And a few other little things that I won't put on now. But that was really very interesting. And Elaine, in her books, mentioned that even during the explosion, she had, different things that people had said about that. And I think she mentioned in there that people were kind of hesitant to talk about it. But you would be surprised that now, people who are older, and I don't know if they're thinking about how much longer they're going to be alive or whatever, but I'm finding that they're very willing to give me their personal stories, and absolutely fascinating. How they worked in the stores, how one lady had to do this, another lady had to do that, what their bosses were like, the temperament of the bosses, things that are not going to affect what Ron is doing for us, but so interesting to find out these people and their
Yeah.
personalities and their feelings. So that's been
It's like an inside edition.
Yeah, it's been a good 3 months for me to be able to talk to these people, and some of them not being able to see them, but talking to them over the phone, and they call me back, and, oh, I forgot to tell you this, and it's really been fun. So anyway, if there's nothing else, then we're gonna turn the whole thing over to Ron.
Make sure this. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Like Nancy already indicated, it's been quite a while, so there's some things to get caught up on. I guess the large thing on our agenda here, the primary task for this evening is really just I'm going to be introducing the pre-application for the National Register of Historic Places designation for the South Villa-Rica Commercial Historic District. So this work started prior to the COVID-19 meltdown. So it's been a long time coming, but we had to stop, of course, because of COVID. We were working from home or not working from home, or I don't even know. But it took a while for us to actually have everything together. Once I got the binder, I got it started on it right away. And I thank Sarah for putting all that information together and gathering all of the previous owners and numerous information. She even went kind of even outside of the area that we're just designating, which is great for the future. So that was a huge help. So I had a lot of help from, or a lot of different resources, I should say, from a lot of different books. The Explosion and Villa-Rica book was helpful. Various online sources for information was really helpful. I looked at encyclopedias, the city's records and old documents and the like, and that was able, a lot of the way that I was able to compile information in addition to what was sent from the commissioners, which I thank you all for. There were random emails I had to send to people asking for random questions. Sarah probably got the brunt of them. So thank you for kind of putting up with that for a while. But you'll see in your packet, there's a number of things. I'll just kind of list them for you so you'll know what we're looking at here. We have the application. It says preliminary eligibility application on the top of it. That has Sanborn maps on the back 2 pages, the 1923 map and the 1933 map, in addition to just an overall, I guess, explanation for what we're trying to do and why we're nominating the properties, and et cetera. So it has a lot of history that's in there. The next thing is the physical description, which is behind that one, which is going to explain, or it does explain, the actual physical construction of the buildings or physical look of them, what style they are, what type they are, what the setting is like. I pulled out on the 2nd and 3rd pages distinguished history or distinguished physical features for certain buildings, depending on what they are. Movie theaters, the Powell Marchman Building, E.T. Doyle, the VR explosion, and of course the setting, which is just as important as the buildings. Next is the developmental history, which is just the history of the 2 blocks and how they came to be, and basically where we are now. It kind of ends at, I believe, I think the latest date that I go to is sometime in the 60s, because they're really, other than the 2006 reconstruction of the Powell Marchman Building. Next in your packet, you'll see historical photos. They're all, unfortunately, we had some printing issues. If I haven't told you that already, there were some issues with the saturation of the photos with our printer. It's something we'll work out before we send in any pre-application, of course. You'll also notice, as a part of that big stapled pictures there, you'll see that some of them are just kind of photocopies of parts of the Explosion of Villa-Rica book, which of course we will give a source, and we'll clean that up by cropping it, the photos themselves and their descriptions, and taking that out, and try to, and of course give a source to that. There's size requirements for the photos, all the photos that we have to submit. It's in the application somewhere, and I'll get all of them to be the same size the best that I can. The ones that are Photoshop is going to be a little tough, of course, because they're really small. They're small photos, and if I blow them up, they'll be pixelated. So I'll try my best with that, but I want to try to include them the best way that I can, because they are historical and they need to. That's probably the most important part of that whole block in history at this point, I guess. The next thing on your list would be the district map. It should have red and green on it. It's 11 by 17. And there's photos, current photos, that I have to include, of course, of the district as well. And they're going to be labeled with each number as they will appear on the map here. So those photos were emailed out as well. I think they were a part of a link that I sent out. So they are numbered correctly in the link. So they'll say 1, 2, 3, going all the way. That's just how I numbered them, and that's how they'll be printed at Acura with the number actually on the photograph. It has to be printed on photographic paper.
Ron, do you have any reason why they won't accept an aerial photograph?
They didn't say why. They just said it pretty clearly on the application that they won't accept aerials.
Yeah, and I saw that.
Yeah.
I wondered why, because we had some, particularly from the explosion and everything. My other question is, with digital time now, and things are a little different, can you also add an appendix maybe with some of those sites where they could actually go onto the YouTube and see the newsreel, where they could actually see it?
I
I know it doesn't
don't
say that
see why
here,
not.
But I think it would be kind of net, whoever's looking at it, if they were actually looking at the fact that it was world, at least all in America, news on all these newsreels, to actually see the actual action of the people working and cleaning up. And on those newsreels, you see the smoke coming up, you see everything.
Mm-hmm. I'll definitely have a page of sources that has to be compiled together, and I'll add that to it. I don't see why we can't do that.
I also have a question. The last block on Main Street between Cheves and North Avenue, is there any value in adding that to the North Commercial Historic District? That's
Well, it
where
would-
the tire shop and a couple of other things are as well.
Art store.
Well, the
Oh, you're talking about the other, okay.
the foo-foo-y
Yeah.
stores.
This is, even though that's a relatively, it's a good question, it's a simple question, it's actually a really complex answer to that. There's a couple things to think about.
I'll
One,
take the short version.
okay, I'll try to condense. For one, if we were to add it, then it would be separated by a large expanse on East Montgomery Street that we wouldn't be able to connect with any block. I can't see how we could have a contiguous area that can wrap around like that unless we were to add the Butterballs on the corner and the ones that are facing that way so we can wrap around to Sheaves. But also because they don't have as much of a relation compared to the North District, which we can always amend and add to as well, or we could set up a separate district altogether, like what we talked about last week. For example, in the past, I've had to designate districts and split them into multiple districts because there will be different types of housing styles together. And that's something that we want to avoid. We want to have kind of like a purebred district where it's all the styles are kind of the same. That's really hard to do in the real world though, because there's houses that built at different times all over the place. But to answer your question, for this one specific block, it would be a different architectural styles on that whole block than the rest of them on the south side of the street. But if we could still add or make it a district at any point in the future as its own district, like for example, a North Villa Rica Commercial District 2 and 1, that's what we used to do, so.
And I was thinking, Butterballs is kind of like right there, so that would, and I'd like to definitely see Butterballs pulled in.
I would like to see that, it's, of course, this is just an idea. I just realized maybe as an individual site too. Being that only because its architecture is so different than the rest of the architecture around it, that we don't want to like muddy the water with it, with, you know, this designation, because it's already really rough with this one, and I'll go into that and I'll explain our challenges with this district and with Fullerville too. I kind of alluded to that a little bit last week.
So we could actually put it on as a historical building site.
Just like we did with the 10
Like we
sites
did with the other one.
last time, as a local, and then we can go all the way up to the national district if we want to.
Yeah,
I have
I'd like
something
to
else about,
explore that.
later about that, but
Okay.
on this picture with the 5 and 10 cent store, there were 2 different owners. Do we know who owned it when it was this 5 and 10 cent self-service one in here?
I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know any of the business owners of any of these businesses
Did I not
other
put it in
than
my
Barry's
book?
Pharmacy. I'm sorry.
Did I not put it in my book? The 5 and
Only,
10?
I saw,
Because they were in 2 different spots
Oh, yeah.
back then, but
And
they
I
had
don't
the
know-
same owner even though it was 2 different spots.
Right. And so, but I wonder which one is this one in the picture?
Oh, the Hensleys?
Yeah, they've got 5 and 10, but it doesn't say which one, so we don't know which of the 2 owners.
I know,
own
like, they
this
passed it
particular
on to their
picture.
daughter or son.
Because that might be important.
which, do we know the address to that one, or which block, the 100 block or 200 block?
It's this one.
Oh, yeah, it's the,
It says 5 and 10,
Yeah,
but what
that's
we
the
do know,
100.
but I
That's
know from
this one
talking to
here.
people, is
they
that
were
there
like
were 2 different,
126, I think, or
owners.
something like that.
I mean, 2 different departments for 5 and 10 cent stores.
You have it
It's on the
here as, let's see, I'll just read it out. It says
In case
building
anybody
2
would ask,
doors.
I think we should know which one.
Before
Okay,
was
yeah.
an alley, was turned into a small barber shop owned
That
by
one.
J.R. Scroggins. 1960, Scroggins sold part to Huey CT, 128 to 128-281, and was added into store. Was Huey's 5 and 10 cent store owned by Fred Lee and wife.
Yeah, Huey.
So, now, I can add that in there, but the problem is, again, it comes back to distinguished people in history, right?
Right.
And I don't know the answer to this question, I'm just asking it out loud. Is someone that's a business owner distinguished in history? I would only say no because let's say if someone owned a store back in 1970, for example, or 1960, somewhere that's 50 years ago, and unless it was a store that I would imagine was something that helped out in like the explosion or helped out in something that was like a huge, there's no
Or
way.
it was Asa Candler's cousin or something of
Right.
that nature, yes. but
Yeah, that's
unless
what I'm
there's
getting to.
some distinct
Yeah.
information about them.
Right.
fine.
Oh.
It's
Leave it
tough.
in
It's
bullet
tough
points.
to do that too if you don't have a lot of like written history on some of these, because some of them may be.
Some owners
Distinguished.
are not operators either.
True.
Yeah, and that's the kind
That's
of
true.
information that I'm getting from the interviews, of people who went to the stores or worked in the stores or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
whatever, so.
So I guess, I mean, I could add that if you guys want me to add it in, but it will be kind of weird because I'm only adding one store's owner, really. So I tried to try to make it flow the best way that we can because of what we're up against, which I'll talk to you about. Last thing here is the tax map. So that's pretty basic, and also again, printer issues, so we'll get that squared away before we submit the pre-app. So, let me see. All right, so basically, everything I think is pretty straightforward on it once you read through it, and if you see anything that's wrong, I would rather the commission tell me that something's wrong than the state tell me that something's wrong. So, if you see anything that you think, well, where did you get that from, or where did you read that at, or I don't recall that, then just send it on over to me. Or if something's simply not factually correct, then let me know, and we'll make the changes we need to make. And now on to the kind of the bad news of it all, right? All right, so with this district, I was well on my way with completing this. And I realized in the North Villarica Historic District nomination in 2002, for whatever reason, the planner at the time decided, or whomever put it together, decided that it was a good idea to put certain language in there that made it extremely difficult to get the south side to be designated. Specifically, they stated that there's no architectural integrity at all on the south side district, and the integrity lies within the north side of the district. They
Right.
made it very clear. This section was maybe a 2-sentence section, and that's what it said. And it was on the national paperwork, so it's in DC. It's already filed for over almost 20 years
However,
now.
Brian and I have had this conversation.
Yeah.
And the conversation that we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand why they did it, because they want to do their own thing. However, in talking to different people, we also know that, and as I told him, well, first of all, as Ron pointed out, at the state level, they have a big turnover all the time. So we don't know that people are going to actually read what was done before. So we can
Oh, wow.
keep our fingers crossed, because it's, on a needs-to-know basis.
No.
They don't say anything.
Well,
That's
Think
nice
we
to
don't do
know.
it.
there's more to that actually too. So yes, I can almost assure you they probably will, because I relate to it so much in this pre-application that they're going to have no choice but to take it off the shelf and take a look at what was done before. But this was filed in Washington already.
Well,
So
you
But there's another caveat.
You said 2002,
I talked
correct?
to Ann Cleary, who had.
Well, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago, and I talked to Ann
Golly.
about a month ago now again. She had her graduate students and undergraduates helping her with the survey. And I pointed out to her about 2 years ago when we
I
were
was
looking at this,
gonna get to that
that
too.
some of those things were not right, they were inaccurate as far as whether they were,
And you are
what
in your
you're not-
packet having current
And so,
photos,
Oh,
my
yeah.
point
Yes.
is,
so. I mean,
because she had graduate students doing it, and
I-
she admitted that she did not check every single one of them,
Ron,
we
you're-
have recourse to say, yes, that's what was written, but it was not necessarily verified.
I think if we got real nice photos of just the building's integrity of itself, like
Mhm.
that's there now, along with this,
Hmm.
would be a big impact. Not just, show you, hey, this is what it was, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But some of the integrity that's still there that negates what they said about the 2002. I think that would be a good impact.
That's exactly what the route I've taken. I emailed as a part of the large email that I sent last week. It has a link on it to the photos. Actually, I'm sorry. This was yesterday's email. I'm getting my emails mixed up. Yesterday's email. It has a link on it to the actual photos because I couldn't add those as an attachment.
Right.
So just take a look at those. If you think that one of them's like or the lighting's wrong, I'll just run back out and grab a
That's
photo of
current
it.
photos.
Yep,
right?
current
Okay.
photos. I took them last week.
I didn't get to see those, that's why I'm asking.
Can I say that, that 2-word sentence that's in that registry for the north side, for the south? It is accurate. There is nothing really historical over there anymore. I mean, but it looks old,
Right.
and we'll go with it.
Hey, let me just say
Like,
this, when I
there
first came to
is, though.
Villarica,
Like there is some integrity left.
Right.
The only thing that
That 100
really
block.
holds maybe stone would be the Doral and Sons store, but
I mean,
everything
just to
else.
fake it out, I would, I mean, not fake it out, I mean, I would get some real decent, and, photos of what the building structure looks like now, not just the whole building, just kinda like, little,
But
Well-
when you look at James, the whole
Some of it
upstairs
looks
was not
old.
original,
Because
and you had the post office, and you had Georgia Power,
yeah.
and there was a glass wall between them, so the people who worked in Georgia Power told me that they could see the people
When
who were
I
working
first
in the post
moved
office.
here,
And that doesn't even exist
when
anymore.
I first moved here, I assumed both of these were the same age. I assumed everything was the same age and the same, like, built at the same amount of time.
Well, see, the
Of
south
course, we
side's
know
been
what
burned
assume.
down like 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Mysteriously, and then blew up and
Yeah.
Right.
nothing over there.
But to me, I always assumed it was old.
We'll just keep assuming.
Right.
So we can,
Well, I don't know. I hear Sarah, and I agree with you to some degree with the integrity, especially the 200 block. But I feel like the movie theater is, it appears from the photos at least, relatively unchanged to some degree.
Okay.
But I don't know. That's the only one on the 200
Okay,
block
well,
that.
forgive me because like I don't think anything built like 1920s and forward to now is old. I
Right.
like
Okay.
back, yeah, my area of expertise is like 1820 to 1850.
Victorian era.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, if you built a house in 1970, it's eligible now.
Right. Right. Like
Um,
ours, 20.
But I guess to get us kind of back on track here, with the issues that we're having. So Nancy, the chairwoman just touched on one of them with the survey. So I didn't know up until I started doing this that the survey even had any factual errors in it and things like that. But now they're coming up quite a bit. So at some point in the future, it'll serve us best to try to get that survey redone. It's already 10 years old, so I know that, well, let me back up. I've heard that the state requires you to do them every 10 years or so.
That's what we were taught in training a couple of years ago, yes.
That is a Georgia-specific thing. I just want you to know that. I've never heard of that before because they
Sarah-
cost so
Sarah
much
told us that,
money.
Not in Rome, but at the one that I went to before, at Chateau Elan, they told us, and I think Kim and you were both there. But we were told at that point that we were still within the guidelines of that 10-year because that was 2018 when we went.
It was,
And
but,
so we
but
were.
they said we need to get it done very quickly.
Yes.
Wasn't there a grant that we
There
had
is.
got to do that?
That
There's
is,
a grant that's available to us
Yes.
to do that.
that's a big
And Paul
burden.
said that they would even do it for free and help us.
I can't believe the state really has put that burden on relatively small towns too. Some towns have less than 5,000 population that might want a historic district, and the cost to do so is high. I've never heard of that in any other state until here. Surveys can be as old. I was using surveys before that was done in 1985, and they were fine with it because nothing really, in reality, surveying what was there at the time, and the buildings were built way back in 1890s.
You can see some progression there, but from 1985 up, there's really nothing.
But Paul also told us at that training that the Three Rivers, that they would actually help do a survey for free with that grant. He did tell us that.
He did tell us that.
Okay.
So I think that not doing that every 10 years would be applicable for a district who perhaps doesn't have any changes. However, on my street, Rockmart Road, since that survey was done, we've had a house burned down and a new structure built that looks like it belongs in Mirror Lake. Because the HPC did not exist, and even if they did, at that point, it would have been, I'm sorry, it did exist, but it was very
Not in
early
a
in the
district.
stages, and it's not a district yet.
Yeah.
So things like that definitely do affect districts, and we need to have surveys. And while I'm on that subject, there are definitely errors. My house is one of those that is an error in that survey. They based the date that it was built off of what my sister, who happened to be living there at that time, told the lady. My grandmother was born in 1890, and I'm pretty sure she was born in this house. So then my date is 1890, not 1886.
Oh, okay. I see.
Same with mine and the
Yes.
same with Alan's.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that
Mine's
prevalent.
1887, what the build date
Is what
And his
is
house,
your
is-
build date, but what is
I was way before that, I believe.
yeah,
It was
his,
a long
his
time.
house, according to the people who know and live in that area, said that his house was the house that the farmers used as their main office area.
There was
and
horses in one of
They
the
all
rooms.
came up there.
Yeah, the street across from you was the old horse alley.
Yeah.
I did see one in the survey that kind of made me chuckle where it said that the house was built in like the 80s or something. And I'm like looking at it, I'm like, that house was not built in the 80s, man. Maybe 1880s, but not the 1980s.
right? So
Um,
there's definitely errors in those.
Yes. So that's another issue that we have to think about. And our last issue, and I'm pivoting a little away from this, is Fullerville. That I thought was going to be a relatively slam dunk, but apparently not, because received a letter from GDOT, actually, it was one of GDOT's contractors, and they were prepared to move forward with the bypass route. It's required by the state's I believe it's the Environmental Protection Division, whatever the HPD is under, basically, their major office has requirements for historical surveys or any architectural or archaeological evidence that there's anything that might be disturbed that might be historical. So they did a report. Apparently, there's been multiple reports, and they've completed the first one sometime around 2005 or so, and they've had addendums ever since. As you know, the bypass has taken quite a while to get started. So the issue, once I got the addendum, the latest addendum to it, when they sent me the letter, I inquired for more information. They asked if we wanted to be a consulting party to the report and to the bypass itself from a historical standpoint. I wrote them back and asked them what's the positives of being so. You say that we could still give comments, but without being a member for these purposes. But if we want to be a consulting member, then we would have to write them back. So they basically said that we have the ability to still participate even though the window closed because of COVID. So they added us to it, and we had a conference call with GDOT, and I raised a lot of concerns as far as how will this affect a future Fullerville district. Their findings in this historical survey report of Fullerville basically just lambasts our survey. They say that it's a lot of inaccuracies in it, as we talked about, and that they kind of question the validity of it. So that already raised the issue in the state's eyes because they've been sending these addendums to the state already. So the state is already kind of aware that there's something cooking in Villa Rica. So
They're for the historical districts altogether?
for Fullerville specifically, yeah. So, but it might erupt into that, yes, because the surveys has all of the other districts or proposed districts in there. So that's one of the issues. The other issues is they're basically said that there's nothing of historical integrity left in Fullerville. They totally ripped apart the mills, both of them, and saying that they've been added on to several times. There's nothing historic there. The main original building has basically been destroyed. The one that's on the north side of Rockmart Road near the soccer field. So they kind of just took the first stab at this and sent it to the state already without the municipality being able to comment all these years. And that's another bad part of it. All these years that we haven't commented on it, and then finally they're actually ready to get started on this, and it just gives us a really bad look that we're just now coming around to this, to saying, oh, wait, but there might be something, we want to challenge this report.
Now, to that point, again, many of the people I've spoken to who grew up in Fullerville, Bernice Brooks, for one of them, as being one of the first and at one point only black family in Fullerville, and talking about how they played games in there. When talking to Sarah Claycorn Taylor, who said that the streets in Fullerville, her dad named them, and they named them after his kids. So the names of some of the streets in Fullerville are named after his children, and that's how they got their names.
Like First Street, Second Street,
because
Third
that
Street.
was one of the cotton fields, areas too.
But isn't that hearsay at that point without documentation? Isn't that like, I'm just playing devil's
She grew up,
advocate
no,
here.
because it's her father and she lived there herself.
I mean, I'm being on the other side, if I'm looking at them saying what this is,
All
it's
you
more or
have
less
to do
just.
is match up census
Right.
information with street names.
Well, then if you do that, it only
Well,
goes
you
back
can,
to
you can see
nineteen forty.
the names of her brothers and
Yeah,
sisters
that's
and the
right.
names of the streets.
But
in
there is
Fullerville,
one house
so
that's
you
Yeah,
over
know
but
there
I
that's
mean,
built in
that could be
1860, and then you have the old city
coincidental
hall, and then you have the jail, and then you
No,
have the
it's
The
school.
Without
schoolhouse.
documentation.
Those are only the
But
only
yeah,
ones
but
that I
there
know
is
that are
documentation
historical
because
accurate.
Yeah.
when Stockmar built the hospital, which is now the church,
Yeah.
Mr. Claycorn was their first treasurer.
Well, it'd be cool if we kept the water tower at least.
And so it's all
Well,
written down.
that's a good, I'm glad that you said that. Chris Montesino's in our office. He kind of took a huge liking to the water tower, like when we both first started, and we're looking to see what we can do to move it somewhere or have it repaired or what have you. But I don't think it's going anywhere.
Or what about
Yeah.
the jail and the cinder block?
Um,
City Hall that was over there.
That would be the center of a new district.
It
I
needs to be
don't think
pushed
anyone's-
back, at least, I guess.
But we
Yeah.
need to make City Hall there, be on the historic,
Yes.
I'd like to
site,
see the
definitely.
schoolhouse. That whole row needs to
Yeah.
be designated.
Has anything been done about the water tower? When Tom called me and had me talk to this lady, and then I talked to her, I talked to him, told him what she said. I don't know what happened after that. But she either wanted to help buy the water tower, or she wanted to at least pay for all the upkeep of it. And then I guess Tom told me that 2 men owned it. But I don't know how much they wanted to sell it for. But she believes that it should be a historical site. When I talked to some of the people I've been interviewing, they said yes, because the water tower in Floraville was the main water site for the cotton mills.
Well, we can always designate it locally. If all of that, Fullerville is kind of, I'm trying to make a case for it to be a national district, right, as a mill town. And obviously, if that's the case, and it's been the water site for the cotton industry, then it needs to be included in that as a central part of it, as a distinguished structure. So I'll work to do that, but with the issues that we were just talking about, and with the bypass, the main thing is obviously I'd probably, have a huge issue explaining to Tom why we need to hold off on the bypass for a historical preservation purpose as HPC emergency. But that's what I stress to them at GDOT, that we do not want to, take the bypass off track because we've waited too long, and
Right.
economic development has to come first to some degree. So it's important that we know that they surveyed an area larger than what is in our survey book for Fullerville, our outline that we have. They went even larger than that. So they went all the way down to, and forgive me if I don't say it right, Harrell Road?
Harold.
Harrell Road. I always get it wrong every
Harrell
time. Harrell Road. So they surveyed a couple properties on there that were really old, ones that I didn't even realize the dates of them. Some of them were very old, so they had a lot of great information in there that I could piggyback off of. But their end conclusion from their report is pretty negative towards a district, and they already sent that to the state. So the problem really is, is the state going to give us a hard time when we do file for Fullerville? It's almost like the situation here with this.
Okay,
There's a
let me-
precedent that's been set.
Let me ask you this then. In some cities, or even where I was from in Florida, the city itself is not historical, but there are streets in it that are. And because we know that Floraville area, according to what we know, is there anything that Sarah might be able to find out, or that you know, or Chris might know? Because when I'm told that was one of the cotton fields, and we know that when the gold went to Dahlonega, that the cotton fields came in until the boll weevils destroyed it. But the cotton fields where I live, and where we live, and then also across the way into Fullerville, that Cleghorn had, can that be carved out in Fullerville to say that, this is the original historic district, and that homes were built after the cotton fields were no longer used? And then, because maybe the whole city of Fullerville does not have to be historic, but only those major parts or the older parts of it.
I think you can do that, but it just needs to be tied to probably the architecture of it. Some towns even tie it to, like, if there's different zoning, like if it's 2-family over here and it's 1-family over here, but it's the same district, they were built around the same time, we'll still separate them by, it's Villa Rica Historic District 1 or District 2. I mean, we could do the same for Fullerville, but it needs to be tied to something specific for why we would do that. So if there's some homes that were built, say, in the 1910s, and then there were some houses that were built later than that are maybe a different style, or by a different company, a development company, a different mill maybe built them, then that would be valid, totally valid.
Let me ask you this, is there any value in including a letter in these applications, both, for the downtown district and for Fullerville, in a rebuttal of the statements that have been made?
Uh,
Is that something that,
we can do, all right, so it depends on how sneaky we want to be, right? So we could try to pretend like we don't know about this.
okay,
I mean, we can kind of pretend that we don't know and have them come back with those statements and then we appeal them to them. We could definitely, certainly do that. I would
well, that
do
one-
that right
I-
away.
I guess that's why I wanted to ask that question, is it gonna be a situation where we could appeal
Mhm.
if they come back with it, or is it just a no?
We can appeal, we can
Okay.
send information back, but the only thing is the appeal definitely can't say anything that will be contradictory to this, to the first time
To
that
the
we
first
submitted,
sighting.
right? Yeah.
We can just add to it.
Yep.
But to me, it sounds like that
Or
you're
clarify.
dealing with, hey, this is historic, let's keep shoving them stuff that way.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what Ron is dealing with, is that we keep like hammering them, so to speak, and and then they found out that this is not a historic.
Right.
Well, it's
after
more
all.
like, other groups have
now-
had the first crack at these
Like the boy who
districts
cried
before we
wolf
did.
Kind of thing, like that, is that what it is? Like, when the sky's falling, now it is, so.
Well, with Fullerville, I could say
Yeah,
that.
But are they taking this in the same?
Being that this was being that this was a report that was generated from a state agency, and they're,
First one?
all of the addendums and the original 2005 report from GDOT.
The one we're referring to in 2002, is that the one you're referring to?
No, not that one.
Oh.
That one's for downtown, but
Okay.
for the south side, but the one I'm referring to is for Fullerville, for the bypass. So in this scenario, if you were to think like the state,
I
if
am, that's
the-
what I'm saying.
if they have a whole bunch of stuff saying one thing and multiple addendums over years,
Right, like you
and then
keep hammering them.
right, exactly. All these other groups or this other company really had the first crack at this district multiple times for years, and now that we're just entering the picture and reviewing them, if we're going to say something contradictory to them, then they already have evidence to the contrary, you know.
Right.
So it's a heightened level of I guess a pass rate in order to get our point across and
Right.
why we think that there is integrity if there's a state agency's hired contract or hired, for lack of better terms, contractor saying otherwise, and they have a historic preservation background as well.
Okay, to that point, Kim and Alan, I think my name was not, when we were at the workshop in Rome, the guest speaker who wrote the book, Why Old Places Matter, remember, he talked about, and has lots of references as to why. Some of it has to do with memory and documented, some of it has to do with sites, even a piece of property without a building on it. And so we've got a whole book that has references that talks about why old places matter. And Ann Cleary, our own Ann, Dr. Cleary, she is one of the references in there. This man has credentials up the gazoo from Europe and London and Switzerland, and even was part of the National Historic Preservation. So he has legitimate arguments as to why those places matter and why they should be historic. And I think that probably we could pull from some of his book on there.
Right. That's what I was kind of getting at, is like, with the original pictures, I think if we just think about it and kind of put together a decent package that, like you have, I think those current pictures would mean more than anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I encourage everybody to take a look at the ones I sent for this district, but the ones for Fullerville will be important, but it's really hard. Pictures, like they say, is worth 1,000 words, and that can work against us too, because if someone had previously shiplap siding and then they've been changed to vinyl, which a lot of them out there on
Right.
Brockmart Road have, and that's going to be a negative. The roofs as well, the roof materials have changed. Some of them have changed to metal, some of them have changed to other materials.
Yeah.
And plus, there's a lack of old photograph, which is another issue that we had here of each individual building, not just a streetscape view of it, but just each individual building. We don't have that here, which isn't abnormal, but it would be helpful.
Remember, and Tim, remember the man who showed us the pictures when we were looking at buildings where they changed the windows, but there still was that outline of where it might have been, even though they
Right.
changed it?
And the
And that
steps.
still kept it historical, right?
Right.
I mean, he was showing
Well,
us
it's
that.
the integrity of the whole building was still there, but they, kinda like mine, you've got
Mhm.
you've got the shell there, but you still have the integrity of the whole building.
Do we have historic photos of the mill properties? That's tough. That's like a significant building in those districts. We have to have one.
We
I'll see if
I can ask.
Teddy.
Sarah, she's a photo bomber.
Luckily, we had them for this district. Other than I think maybe E.T. Doyle was the only one I didn't have an old photograph of like the significant buildings like the movie theater and all of that. I had all the other
Doyle,
historic
I'm
photos.
sure Doyle, I know him, you can walk right in there and get anything from him.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody can send me that by July something, I didn't know. I asked Elisa before, and she did say they might have some old photos, but I wasn't presented with
I
any.
can go over there and talk to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I buy all my feed from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we-
Well, that will help. I'll add that to this packet then. But for the mill, for both of those mills on Fullerville, it's like vital information to
That's
have.
handed down, handed
It's
down.
like kind of like talking about something that could be visualized and we don't have it.
Okay,
Well, it would be hard to get if there was a lot of people that work there.
Yeah.
Sarah, Elaine's husband grew up on Liberty Road along with Janice.
Mhm.
And she said that they remember taking the cotton to the gym.
Mhm.
Is it possible that he's got pictures? And I'll ask Janice if she has it when she grew up, but she said she used to love to ride in the trucks that would go to the mill when they take and put the bundles of cotton on their porches. But he was right there on Liberty Road, and that's where he was.
Yeah, but as old as he is, he's talking about the cotton gin that was here, right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. but
I
that-
thought
because
y'all were
they-
talking about the Fullerville one.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, but they would bring it to the cotton mills.
From the gin to the mill, is that what you're saying?
Oh. Oh, okay.
I don't know. I never really asked him what he had photos of. I mean, our meeting is Thursday, and I'll take them this and let them read over it,
Okay.
and then I'll ask my group for photos. And that's the most I can do.
So I guess really quick for 5 minutes or less, I'll detail you guys what is actually going to happen next and where we are in this process, how far it's going to go. In your packet, you'll also see some printouts from the Georgia Historic Preservation Division. And they basically go off, they start with indicating what exactly the National Register of Historic Places is, and what their criteria is. Looks like somebody's trying to get in here. Oh, he has a key.
Okay.
And basically, there's an application that's in here. It talks about the entire process in a 6-part section that you'll see here as well. And it starts with part 1, where to start, and it goes all the way through. So it is a relatively long process. In the past, I've designated maybe 4 historic districts and multiple sites before, like multiple sites, but.
That were approved?
Yes, were approved. The process was a little different. Georgia has a lot of extra steps. In other states, they allow you to just submit straight to Washington, D.C. They don't need, it's a totally separate state requirement for a state designation. But here in Georgia, there is some positive news because they combine the process together all in one. So once you are awarded the National Registry, you're also awarded state as well, all at the same time. But the state does have a pre-application requirement, which is what we're doing right now. And then we're going to move on to an application requirement once they submit feedback to us and they give us they call a sample nomination form. So we'll take the sample nomination form. We basically copy it onto the new application for the National Registry and we can send it directly off to them. But before we're able to do that, we have to have buy-in from the property owners, which we kind of talked about in the January meeting. So all we'll need to do is basically give written notice that we have an intent to file an application on their behalf for the National Registry. And we have to have 50% of all owners. It doesn't say business owners, it says specifically owners of the buildings, so.
Yeah, that
That
hasn't
is
changed.
pretty consolidated, as if, if you're aware of the ownership, so.
Those things, those criteria have not changed, but I noticed that on their submission materials, that they did apparently in May last year, there's a few other things there that were not on the one that I already have.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
And the CD and the DVD flash drive, I'm wondering if we couldn't expand that, like I said, even if you're able to put it on a CD, you can also put a hot link on that CD that shows the movie.
Very well, you could.
And so,
Just a video of it.
yeah,
A little excerpt.
you know, a lot of these are exactly the same that we've had to some extent, but there's a few more in here.
What is this?
What they haven't put on here, though.
20-year-old don't know what a CD is.
Yeah, you know what they haven't put on here,
Yeah.
unless I'm not reading it, is
Eight-track.
the idea that we
No,
have to
eight-track.
have the public meetings and have it in the newspaper for so many days and consecutive days, which is why when you're putting it in the Times Georgian, because they don't publish on that one day, we have to make sure that it's consecutive.
Yes,
Because we
big
kind of
part
messed
of
up
it.
on that other one.
So it would have to be it would have to be two consecutive issues of the same paper, so that, I don't think we'll have an issue having that taken
No.
care of, though, so.
We learned the hard way to not do it the first time we tried.
I can't remember what actually happened for the first time. It was so much going on that I
And you were
mean,
brand new,
yeah,
but what we didn't take a look at was that the Times Georgian is not a 7-day-a-week newspaper.
yeah,
And
that's
so
what it
we
was,
had
yeah.
it one day, and so it was null and void what we put in, because it wasn't consecutive days.
Right.
Yeah.
And on top of it, we had to have 2 public hearings,
Mhm.
and that's what had to be in the paper. I went on the radio at 8 o'clock in the morning one time, all the way down to Carrollton, to try to tell people to come to that meeting, and it was on the same night. How many people were gonna listen to it and come on that day? So we did a lot of things incorrectly, or at the wrong time to get it on there. So now I guess we need to be more astute and cognizant of the timelines, because they're really very strict about that. And Sarah actually said,
The state also has I don't know if this is really a state requirement or if this is federal or not, but the requirements from 2002 versus the requirements now, there's like no comparison. I mean, it's way more comprehensive now what they want. They change it every couple years, so I think this was a recent
That may be to an
change.
advantage though, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
if we have a plethora of information that's not oral history, then yes, then it can be. But I guess I don't think we're gonna have too much of an issue as far as getting the actual application part. We just need to pass this pre-application. It'll give us comments and stuff too, and things that we might be able to improve for the actual application.
Okay.
But I just hope that it's a positive outcome in general. There's just so much stucco on that side of town,
I'll
and
talk to Doyle. He'll
it's
get
gonna be kind of rough.
That'll help too.
The worst case scenario, though, because I don't like giving up. The worst case scenario, if they come back, which is totally negative and everything is horrible, then we'll just have to curtail back the borders to the core district areas that have not been altered by stucco and other things. And it should give us a stronger, and it's more architectural integrity for one district. It's just gonna be small.
okay, now you mentioned, and this might be important for us. Well, it's important because, remember, we learned that local takes precedence over national when it comes to doing that. And you mentioned that we might be able to do these at the same time simultaneously.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's important for us to move to make sure that we can at least get the local part of it, so that anybody who happens to want to change anything on that south side would have to come to us, because right now, they can do whatever they want, and we have no jurisdiction over it.
Right. Um,
I'm all for change though, sometimes.
There's some things on that side that
Yeah.
need to be changed, but
Yeah, we'll definitely do a local designation. I think once the pre-application results come back to us, I'm not sure how long that takes, but once I submit them to pre-app, I'm gonna ask them how long it's gonna take us to get it back, an answer from
Do we
them.
have to have a public hearing before you send it in?
No. Mm-mm.
Send it in and then have it?
Nope, no public hearing required for the pre-app, only for the regular application.
Okay.
But you can keep us posted on how it's going.
So it should be really quick. I imagine by the end of July, this will be with the state. By our next meeting, really, right after our next meeting, I'll be sending it off, so.
I guess we need to get together and get
Mhm.
pictures and stuff.
Okay.
So we'll have hopefully an answer soon, and then we'll
When
get started on the
when you-
local part,
When you gonna plan on submitting it?
right after, our next meeting in
Okay.
July. Mhm. So that, I guess that kind of completes this item on the agenda. That was kind of the big item, so.
You didn't mention Hicksville. Do we need to mention Hicksville and with Fullerville?
Hickstown? well,
Hickstown? I did.
Hickstown.
In the history section, I mentioned,
I read that where you did the
Mm-hmm.
Hickstown.
yeah, Hickstown,
Chiefstown.
Sheavstown. There was Pine Town too, but I don't think I mentioned Pine Town.
Pine Town was over there by the Pine Mountain Museum,
Yeah.
right where the airport is.
Yeah, I didn't mention it. I didn't have anywhere near as much information on it as the other two, so other than maybe like a one-liner.
And Sarah, this might be more of a you question. This is a hand-me-down story, so I don't know if any of it's valid whatsoever. But Cheves was way back when Chavez, Chevas.
They
Is-
pronounced it both ways.
Okay.
Cheese, Chavez.
Okay, just wondering.
I say Chavez just because
Well, there's
It's-
some
they're
older
like
graves up
Spanish.
at the big cemetery, Chavez.
but I was corrected by a historian and say Cheves, but that sounds redneck. I like
Yeah,
Chavez.
Chevez.
And one other thing for you, the house across the street from mine, the White House, if just a little to the left,
Uh-huh.
there is a stone building like the old Fullerville Court City Hall,
Oh, yeah.
right beside it. That was the ice house that was attached to the White House when it was a store.
Oh,
Ah,
Wow.
I didn't even know it was
Okay.
a store. That's cool. Yeah, because we didn't know who made those bricks. So there's that little Fullerville City Hall, and then there's a house across the street from the Berry House that has the same block, and then the Ice House. So that's it. Well, on other news, the Marchman House has 2 broken windows. We're funding to pay to fix those. The Reed House has 2 broken windows and a hole in the roof. We're gonna work with the homeowners to repair that. The Wicks Tavern is, falling to the side. We all know that. And the Hart House, we were gonna go full on to fix that. And the church stopped us and told us that the builder was still gonna go through with repairs, but I don't believe that, so we're probably gonna go full on.
now
Yeah.
because I belong to the Georgia Trust as well, I've been sending them to everybody. But have you looked into seeing if we could get a grant from them for the Hart House?
What, grant from who?
To get the Hart House?
Georgia National Trust.
No, they told us that with it being the way it is, back when, before they even moved it, we were trying.
Kind of the same as what we were told, Nancy, when we were out there at the Hart House.
See, Villarica has always been gung ho about tearing everything down. Hurrying
Certainly
up,
our churches,
move
for
it
some
over.
reason.
Yeah.
Well, and our commission is responsible for all of the nonsense that went into it because, it was due to be demolished. But at that point, 2 of our commissioners put a sign on the door and stopped the people from demolishing it on that particular day. And so it was there, but from that point on, with the Historical Society and other people
I
trying
know.
to do it,
It tears me up when I see stuff like that too, man.
and basically the building, as
I'm
you
gonna have
said,
to unfriend
historically.
you.
The
Sarah.
Reed
Every time
House,
I
that
see
just
one of
breaks
them,
my
I just-
heart,
a
seeing
tear
that.
comes
Oh.
down.
I know, that's why I share it, because it angers me so much. I'm gonna anger
It
everybody
It
else.
pisses me off.
Yeah, the
Pisses
Reed
me off.
House,
It
I,
makes me mad when I see stuff like that, cause I mean, wow. I mean, how, cause I can see it finished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. I can see it.
We talked in-house a little bit, maybe 2-3 weeks ago about the Reed House, and I mentioned that it would be great to have it on the historic registry, no matter if it's local or state or national, what have you. So that's all, if the commission is up to it, then we can always designate
Try.
that or try, yeah.
And then what we did, we went along with what Sarah and the state, because after we looked at it, because Ron and Lisa and Sarah and I went and physically looked at all those sites. And Sarah's complaint or criticism of it was that we didn't have the pictures of it exactly with the porch. But to your point, the actual shape of the outside is exactly the same.
Correct.
And so, and you could absolutely restore it just like you did Very Promising and make it look just like that. And she said until it was actually
lot of
restored
work.
to look like that,
Yeah.
they couldn't do it. But
To me, a house, something like that, I would rather fix something old and make it new than buy something new.
remember, we overrode the state with the Presbyterian Church, with the
These
baptismal fount,
Mm-hmm.
and then one other, I think, that we overrode them. So we could go ahead and do that to at least.
In my head, my strategy here is really to, the ones that we do not have any sites in town, sites or historic districts that don't have a lot of history that we can like, I don't know if we have history on the Reed House, for example. But for the ones that we don't, then we can always designate them locally here and still save them regardless. That is still gonna be the spear, the tip on the spear. But of course, I think that if you're going to designate someone's property historic and you want to get them to the National Registry, that should be still the ultimate goal. It's the creme de la creme of historic preservation for
Right.
tax purposes and things like that. So,
Are we still
put me on
forgetting,
there, I'll
are we
go.
still forgetting our Indian heritage? I mean, we've got the Creeks, you've got McIntosh Reserve, Chief McIntosh, where you've got, a mother who was Scottish and a father who was, Indian. But we have a lot of history right here in Villa Rica with the Indians and the fighting and the tribes and all that they did during some of those wars.
Right.
So possibly, we can make a case using the Indian historic that we're not really doing. Because even part of the cemetery, going way, way back, is Indian too.
we can, but it would have to be a relation to something that's out there now. Like, I don't know how I would
The
relate that.
cemetery in town.
The Old Town Cemetery?
Yep, but he's saying
Yeah.
if we try
Mm-hmm.
a new site, it would have to have something, a
Well, see-
relation to something that is already documented
That
in
would have been the
Indian
Hart
history.
House since the
Exactly.
trail went directly behind the Hart House
Right.
at the
Mhm.
time. And then
Right.
over there where they're putting a roundabout, there's a rock
Yeah.
that supposedly is covered and it's got initials from Civil War where
Right.
they camped out over there.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah,
And
like that
back
would
to
be
the
great.
cemetery across from City Hall, that one section was even before they came was an Indian burial area.
Hmm.
Those would be just
the city,
sites,
where the
though,
city
right?
hall is now,
Yeah, in,
that would used to be a tannery, where, you talking about where the park is, the Centennial
yeah,
Park?
she's talking about the cemetery that's over there. What is it?
Hillcrest?
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, you're
Thank
talking
you.
about the Chambers
Kilcr-
Burial Ground. Oh,
Right.
The river that ran through it,
Right, yeah.
yeah, the Powell Park is
Mhm.
Yeah.
an Indian.
So since we have, and I kind of, I've mentioned some of that in the designation for the local designation that we did with the Indian heritage that's there. So, I mean, that's probably the only site that I know of, other than the two that you indicated just now, that would have that type of history, but I'm sure there's plenty more sites out there. Yeah, I'm sure there's tons.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, I just have to relate that to what's there. Like if we're talking about like the Reed House, for example, why was that house built, or was it a farmhouse? If so, then do we have any info on the farm? You know, stuff like that.
I'm sure that information will be fairly easy to come by, because there's still descendants of those families.
I do have it,
here in
and
town.
there is no historical significance really for it. It's just,
Other than
it was just
to
a
our
beautiful
town.
home, and, the family who owned one of the stores over here lived there. And so,
Not like my house.
the original,
Yeah.
the daughter that's left, she lives all the way in Canton. She's been in contact with me. I think she could help with some of the funds and then the homeowners won't get they put a lien
Great.
on it actually.
Oh, the homeowners.
So we would have to pay them back if we.
We
were
did
to
a title
pay it
search, maybe about a month ago.
a month ago, and
Yeah.
was the lien on there?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah,
For
they had to
removing
be
the house?
chased up
I mean,
multiple
the tree.
times to someone who doesn't live near here. I don't know the
Yeah,
details.
I
The-
already did the title search on it. I mean, I wish I
Oh.
would have told me. I had.
I didn't know either. I kind of walked into the room, and Tom already commissioned it already, so I didn't know
I
anything.
hope someone didn't get paid a hefty amount.
No, I think it was our city. I think it was our city attorney probably did it.
Okay,
from
'cause
what I
I did it,
understand.
and I already contacted the owners, and what had happened was somebody's paying the taxes on it, and it's in another name, and technically they could have it, but they're not going through the paperwork to get it, because they don't, I guess, want the ownership of it, they just wanna keep paying taxes on it for some reason. And the people who did used to own it, they were builders who like to fly high and buy all these boats, and then when the stock market, when it fell, they lost everything and got rid of it, so it's like,
Wow.
So I guess that's kind of all that I have for this item specifically, but just it's for you guys to know what's going on and what's coming up. Speaking of what's coming up, we might have an application coming our way from Los Cowboys. So we don't want to prejudice the application, so I won't talk about it too much. But you can know that it is it's for a canopy structure or an awning type of structure on their existing street patio furniture. So we will be using the design standards for the first time on that. There is language on canopies and things like that, but again, they're just guidelines. So
And they talked about that for a long time. They've wanted it for over a year.
yeah, it looks like there's some movement on it. So I've talked to I sent an email off to his Humberto's daughter today.
Their neighbor has already put the other outdoor something out there, right?
Oh, I haven't gone past.
I think they did a outdoor seating next door to them too for the steakhouse. The Uncorked.
Do they usually have?
They did, and I saw them out there building something not too long ago. No, it was just a little seating area out there.
do we have any word on the Marchman house? I mean, when, I asked somebody if we could put dirt around the back, and y'all said that the codes would have to help with that.
Has anybody complained or said anything about the fact that you all clean up so much around there? By Happy Valley?
Well, my husband went out there to help them just to suck butt, and, they told him that they would eventually clean out the house, but that was before the COVID, and then that's when the window got broken, another window got broken. So we haven't really been, kinda testing the waters, because I have some, I call them HPV people. They're like, they live right down the road from me, and there's 2 duplexes, Alan, and,
Who's that?
they're a bunch of riffraff, Happy Valley, and they've already been harassing me, so they know who I am. So I feel like if I continue with what I put up on Facebook, I'll probably have my animals killed or something like that.
No.
I'm serious, they done killed like 6 of my chickens.
Where at? Are you the ones with the fat chickens? You got some fat chickens.
I got 2 big old roosters, and now I got 1 hen. She gets
God,
none on
that'd be
record.
the name of a
That
good
poor
restaurant,
thing
the
gets-
Fat Chicken.
gets it back.
I do have something that I wanted to ask about. I thought, perhaps Bobby or Tom would be here, this evening, but the signs that were way back in February that never applied, they are within the North District. Now I'm losing my mind. What is it? Sorry, I'm trying to pull this up and give you the address. 309 Main Street and 303 Main Street.
And they are within the North District, she's right.
They are within our district,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not apply for signage, and at least one of them definitely does not meet the code. The other one perhaps could. It was February of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up and asked Bobby that day if they had applied. They did not apply for a signage permit with the city. And it was shortly after that that COVID hit. And I've sent multiple emails and still gotten no information about it.
That a commissioner, commissioners come by and
At one point, Chris told me, he thought that it was one of them that had been grandfathered in.
They are,
And was, that's, and I didn't understand what he meant by,
he means before we had the design standards and some of the, before we had.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
But this was after.
no,
Yeah,
this
that
is
was-
after.
yeah.
So there's actually 3 buildings with new signs all in a row. It's 311, 309, and 303. Now, 311 is not exactly a new sign. It looks exactly like the plaster business that we approved the signage for. It's the same coloring, it's the same lettering. I'm almost fairly certain it's probably the same board that was just repainted. But we still never saw an application for that. Now, 309 and 303 are brand-new signs. Definitely after we approve those standards. And one of them, the 303, I don't even think would fit the city standard because it is so large. You almost hit your head on it when you walk past it. So,
We'll check these out then. I'll
Yes.
send an email to code enforcement, Ivory, and, the permits department, and I'll copy Bobby and then,
one of them is, the one that is extremely large, 303, is Downtown DIY Studio.
Okay, so I do know, on
Okay.
that one, they actually had put in an application prior to the design guidelines being adopted.
Ah,
Unfortunately, it had been misplaced in our department where it was not brought back to our attention until after they were saying, we want to open up this week and we want a sign up. So there was already an argument there on there was a big stretch on when they applied versus when they were adopted, simply because that application had been disregarded for whatever reason.
That may be why Chris said it was
But
grandfathered
we
in.
made the ultimate decision, because they wanted to open up, that it was submitted
before the guidelines.
for the guidelines, even though that sign is atrociously
It
too
is-
large. It's just,
So does it even fit in, I mean, the city has a code in regard to sign, right, and height, so,
approved that.
so you're telling me that a sign that is probably only 7, no, not even that far off the ground, because I'm 5'7", and I can put my whole hand up on it.
Right, unfortunately, that's the route that was taken.
Lord
I
have
do
mercy,
know that
okay.
one. The other two I'm not aware of, but that one was brought up.
The other one is Eclectic Decor and More.
and that's 309, right?
That is 309. That sign is hideous. It is an eyesore. It's awful.
I agree.
Where is that at?
So, please put down your list to email him about the dirt around the Marchman house, please.
Oh.
It's been a year, I've been after y'all about it.
Around the Marksman House.
Oh, what cuties.
Oh, no, look at that.
Oh.
Yeah. We know you're bragging.
Unless we have further business to talk
Do we need to adjourn?
I
It's,
move to adjourn.
Yeah, y'all
or do
get-
you,
Uh,
does that
okay.
need to be within the
Motion, a second.
second?
All in favor?
Y'all leave too quick.
Okay.
Y'all get on my
The rest
nerves.
of it's
Thank you
sideball.
very much, everybody, and stay safe, continue